Samsung very recently released two brand new flippable phones. We've already talked about the smaller brother, now it's time to talk about the flagship favored son, the Z Fold 3. How has this beast held up over the past week, and more importantly, is this worth buying if you were in the market for a new phone, especially one that can do this? Ooh. So, is it? Let's find out. What's up everyone, I'm the Everyday Dad, and if I can figure it out, you can figure it out. Right off the bat, let's get some disclaimers out of the way. Or, I guess we should get the lack of disclaimers out of the way, because nobody provided this phone phablet thing to me. I paid for this myself by purchasing it from my local Best Buy. And as we haven't done a follow-up video on the Z Fold 3 yet, let's quickly cover the specs and pricing information if you are considering buying one of these substantial phones. Much like the Z Flip 3, there are a few different color options for the Z Fold 3. However, again, you really only get two substantially different variants. You get the 256GB model for $17.99 or the 512GB model for $18.99. Now, you might be confused because on their website, you will see these for $8.99 and $9.99 respectively, but that's with pretty substantial trade-ins at the point of sale. So if you are looking to buy these outright, $17.99 and $18.99. For that money, you'll get a front 6.2-inch AMOLED display, a 7.6-inch unfolded main AMOLED display, both of these will be running at 120Hz refresh rate, a Qualcomm Snapdragon 888 8-core processor, there's so many 8s in that processor, a triple 12-megapixel camera array, 12GB of RAM, and a 4400 mAh battery. And as a bonus over the Z Flip, the Fold can also work with Samsung's S Pen. Now, okay, that's enough. 30 seconds, that's enough talking about specs. So let's talk about the things that I've liked and the things that I've disliked over the past week. Now, this video, it's probably going to have a different vibe than my opinions on the Z Flip 3. Personally, I think the Z Flip 3 is a reasonably priced, very functional phone that, while it is held back in a few key ways, it is a worthwhile tool that could be added to somebody's kit. The Z Fold 3, though, is a purely high-end wonder that's more spectacle than like a real functional tool. Sure, I've enjoyed a lot about this, and this is a ton of fun, but an ATV is also expensive and is also a lot of fun, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for somebody's only means of transportation. And I do want to start off with the dislikes today. Look, there aren't as many as on the Z Flip 3. I mean, there shouldn't be, right? The thing costs almost double what the Flip does. I would hope it has a few better features. So even though it is a little better, I wanted to start off with the dislikes. And I really only have two dislikes, and I think they're more nitpicks than dislikes. The first one is, I really don't like how the phone feels when in folded mode. It is a little heavier than my iPhone 12 Pro Max, while it's also taller and narrower, and that makes it kind of uncomfortable and unwieldy to hold. The extra thickness of the dual panes folded on top of each other really comes into focus here more so than on the Flip, because to use the full screen on the Flip, the phone is open and it's relatively thin. But here, if you want to use this in standard phone mode, you have to use it folded up, and it is a kind of uncomfortable experience. Even though my iPhone 12 Pro Max is absolutely physically wider, you get about the same amount of usable thumb reach. Now, I don't know if there is a technical term for usable thumb reach, so we're gonna stick with that as like the yardstick of success here. It kinda sucks, because if you want to get a regular phone experience, you get a very narrow front screen, and we will talk more about that in a second. But that narrower screen feels bigger and more cumbersome to use because of how thick the phone is. Now, it's not a deal breaker, but it is something to get used to if you are going to try and cart this around. And the second thing that I dislike is the front screen. It's weird, but the Z Fold 3 feels both too big and too small at the same time. The front screen is almost too narrow to function properly. I'm obviously not somebody that is against small phones. I really like the iPhone 12 mini, and I really like the Z Flip 3. But this front screen is not small, it's just that it's really narrow, and it makes everything feel so scrunched. It's functional, and the aspect ratio does crop in enough to make it so that you can still use the phone, but doing anything like typing on the included keyboard, it's a real hassle because of how small the keys are. And even if you made the keys bigger, it would then take up so much of the phone. I just don't get the feeling that I'm supposed to be using this front screen all that much, which is a third of all the screens, which is kind of a problem when you want to use a device, right? Now again, that's probably a personal preference thing, or maybe I'm just used to a standard phone's width, and I like how the folding nature plays for the Flip. The Fold doesn't seem to really gain as much from the foldable nature of the front display as its sibling does. But in good news, those two nitpicks are really the only things that I dislike about the phone itself. pricing aside. So let's get into the things I've liked, because there are a lot. Look, despite those two complaints, this thing is fun as heck, and it's a really impressive little feat of engineering. The very first thing that I like is just the folding nature by itself. It's so cool that I can have this kind of narrow phone in my pocket that unfolds into basically a little tablet. I've still not gotten over this novelty, and I've been using this as often as I can throughout the past week. This is just such a great content consumption device because you can answer your texts and phone calls from the front screen, and then you open the phone up to watch movies or shows, or even cool dads who make tech YouTube videos. Subscribe to the Everyday Dad. There's like a little thing that you can click below. Now, I've recently started rewatching the entire Venture Brothers series, and this has been my constant companion for that binging. It's been great. The show's great too, but it's great watching it on a big screen. Something you might be curious about is why did I not talk about the crease here as a dislike when I did bring it up on the Flip 3? Now the surprise is, I don't mind the crease as much here. I think it bothers me less because it's vertically running down the screen here. So I'm rarely running my hands over it. I mean, the glass is perfectly smooth as far as my hands go in use. And because it's running top to bottom and I spend most of my time staring at the middle of the screen, I don't really see it all that much. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but it's how I feel when I use it. If I do turn this horizontal, I will see it more and it will bother me more, but because the screen is more square, I don't really ever rotate it on its side. So the crease is just less of an issue for the Fold than the Flip. Plus, the screen itself is breathtaking. Even during the unboxing video, I was kind of caught off guard at just how good it looks, and I don't think I've ever had that happen before. It's just so impressive to me that they were able to fit in such a big screen on this foldable phone, while also making that screen one of the sharpest and most vibrant that I've ever seen. I also really like the refresh rates here more than I like them on the Flip, because I do think it makes more sense here. A bigger tablet-ish device like this could be more easily used for gaming, which I think high refresh rates are actually useful for, while the Flip is more about being a phone. But no matter what else somebody could say about this thing, it's got a good display. Well, it's got 3 good displays, right? I've also really liked how the camera integrates with the display. Normally, if you want to take a selfie, it's easier to use the front-facing selfie camera. I mean, that's why they started putting those on phones, right? But here you can actually fold the phone open and use the real back camera, and then the narrow front screen is now your preview device. I think this is a super cool and elegant advantage towards having a phone like this. Now you don't need to sacrifice and use the meh front-facing camera. You can use the rear serious camera, not only for selfies, but also for meetings and other such events where you actually care about the quality of your video feed. Plus, if you want to use this as a webcam for meetings, you can have it in fold mode where you have the phone folded open in front of you, and you can have the front-facing camera ready to go standing by itself. We saw this on the Flip also, and I think this is great. I hate holding my phone during meetings if I'm going to be on screen, and I always forget to bring a stand. So generally, I will have to wedge my phone up on a book or a screen or a computer or some other random thing on my desk. And it's nice to just not have to worry about that here. It's its own built-in stand. I've also really liked the build quality. Whatever else I will say about the price or value, they did not seem to skimp on the components here. The body of this phone feels incredibly robust. The hinge on its back feels like it will hold up to a ton of folds, and it feels very satisfying to open and close. The buttons are also very clicky. The phone doesn't only look high quality, it also feels high quality, and I prefer tech that just feels nice to use. Something else that I like that comes over from the Flip is all of the authentication options here. You've got face unlocking, fingerprint unlocking, pin and pattern recognition too. And I actually find the face unlocking to work better here than on the Flip. Here, it's just a couple of taps, phone unlocks. Plus, kind of showing my preferences again, I like having options because face unlocking isn't foolproof when you've got to wear a mask all the time. Giving customization for other options, so good. I also really like that the Fold 3 has Samsung DeX. Now this might be one of the coolest phone features that I've ever seen, and yes, I can appreciate how boring that I am as a person that I think that a productivity feature is the coolest thing that I've ever seen. With one cable, you can turn your phone basically into a computer, and I've run a few things through this over the past week, and it's held up very well. We did make a whole video trying out Samsung DeX, so if you do want to see how this phone holds up trying to use it in computer mode, you can go check out that video. I'm not going to go too in depth here because we've already done that. But what makes that feasible is the last thing that I've really liked, the power. The Snapdragon 88888, I guess I didn't have to say 88888 if I said triple and then 888, redundant. The Snapdragon 888 is for real. This phone feels like one of the most powerful tech devices that I've ever used. Programs load instantly, everything feels super smooth, and even when plugged into desktop mode, nothing goes slow. I haven't seen a slowdown, I haven't seen a hiccup, I haven't seen a stutter. Personally, I don't really like benchmarks for phones or tablets like this, and we won't do those here because I kind of think they're a waste of time. Like, who cares if my phone scores whatever number on whatever blah blah blah. I will say that what you get here is remarkably powerful. But at the end of the day, so what, right? Should you go out and get the Samsung Z Fold 3? Not really. The only way I could recommend the Z Fold 3 is purely as a fun gadget, and you just happen to have loads of cash laying around that you can just throw at a tech device. By itself, this is a mortgage payment on my house. I dislike how much this costs. Yes, I get it. It's a high-end luxury phone. It's supposed to be expensive. I got that. Thank you, YouTube commenters that are already, I hear you typing right now. But this is also touted as a professional work tool, and yes, it has some features that I think help sell it as such, but for $1,800, you can buy an actual office, phone, computer, bag, accessories. You can get so much for that money that I think marketing this as a working professional's phone is kind of a big stretch. For example, let's lay out some numbers here. You get an iPhone 12, MacBook Air, and AirPods for $1,848. Roughly the same cost as this, right? Okay, this is a Samsung video. Let's say you want to get away from Apple and buy Samsung themselves. A Samsung Galaxy S21 and Galaxy Book Pro will run you $1,847. If you want to buy a cool, fancy toy, more power to you. More power to you, and go out and get there. I'm certainly not going to try and stop you, but if you're looking for a tool, there are better ways to spend your money if you are looking for professional features. And if after all that you are still considering buying one of these, you can check out my other videos talking about the Fold 3 by clicking right here. Click, 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 click. Thanks for watching.